Dear Mom, I miss you. I'm okay. Happy Mother's Day.
Dear Bryson, I wanted to let you know we found your mom's address. It was a hard search in heaven, looking beyond the stars and the planets many, many solar systems away, but we found her. We know how important your letter is. That's why we will do everything possible to deliver your note. I've got a really big idea on how we can reach her.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ronald Reagan dinner. Excuse me. I was told this is the Conservative Political Action Conference. Is it? So I just welcomed you to a dinner named after Ronald Reagan. My name's Larry O'Connor. I promise I'm not going to yell at you anymore tonight. I'll be your MC this evening. My job is to get things moving along. You're welcome. The Ronald Reagan dinner started in 1974, and I promise tonight will not seem as long as it's been since 1974. It's named after the first keynote speaker. That would be the Gipper himself, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan spoke at CPAC 13 times, so we all understand how important this dinner is. It's very special to us, and we are so happy as part of the CPAC family that you are here for this incredible evening. Thank you for being here. Now, well, if you like that, you're going to love the rest of the night. We have some incredible speakers tonight, but I first want to recognize some of our distinguished guests. Are you ready? It's time for the distinguished guests. Executive Director of the American Conservative Union, Dan Schneider, and his wife, Gisela Schneider. American Conservative Union Treasurer, Congressman Bob Beaupre, and his wife, Claudia Beaupre. American Conservative Union Vice Chair, Charles Giroux. American Conservative Union Secretary Kimberly Bellissimo. Oh, and her husband, Terry Davis. I'll explain the Bellissimo thing later. American Conservative Union Foundation Vice Chair, the incomparable Millie Hallow, and her husband Ralph Hallow of the Washington Times. American Conservative Union Foundation board member and NRA Second Vice President Lieutenant Colonel Willis Lee. American Conservative Union board member and president and CEO of the Washington Times, Larry Beasley, and his wife, Lori Beasley. That would be the Washington Times, the paper of record here in Washington. Now, 3 ACU board members, brand new board members, author and former Deputy National Security Advisor, K.T. McFarland. And her phenomenal husband, Alan. Deputy General Counsel at First Solar Incorporated, Tim Ryan. President of Practical Employee Solutions, Veronica Birkenstock, and her husband, Brian. Executive Director of CASM, Coalition Against Socialized Medicine, Mark Palazzo, and his wife, Stacy. Ladies and gentlemen, ACU Chairman, Matt Schlapp. And former White House Director of Strategic Communications, Mercedes Schlapp. I got a slap. See that? Little high slap, high five. All right, now let's hear it for all of our distinguished guests, please. A round of applause. Do you remember that time when the MC of the Reagan dinner lost his voice? Wasn't that awesome? It's about to happen. I'm a radio host here in Washington, D.C., and it's very exciting at CPAC where we get to do our radio show from here, and it is fun. It also means that I've been talking for about 48 hours straight, so I appreciate you bearing with my, my challenged voice tonight. Thank you. Now, please rise and welcome Jamie Burke, who's going to ask God for a blessing this evening. That'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Julie Woods Hill, and, of course, the singing of our glorious national anthem by Jonathan Moy.
Thank you. Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, we are here this evening to celebrate one of our nation's greatest leaders and to be grateful for your bountiful blessings as we come together with fellow conservatives for this Ronald Reagan dinner. Lord, please continue to help us demonstrate the virtues of the conservative movement and help us to promote the values we hold so very dear, the value of every life, the value of a strong national defense, the value of worshiping you in the manner of our choice, and most of all, the value of individual freedom. Lord, thank you for the great American capitalist economy, and help us to remember, as Ayn Rand once said, America's abundance was created not by public sacrifices to some vague common good, but by the productive genius of free men and women who pursued their own personal interests and the making of their own private fortunes. Lord, please continue to grace our unique and wonderful nation with the power and the wisdom which has led us to be the best example of these values ever seen in the history of this planet. And help us bring this message to freedom-loving people around the world. Lord, please bless our nation's leaders, especially our President, Donald J. Trump, and tonight's speaker, our National Advisor, Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, with the strength and wisdom to guide us forward through this time of divisiveness, anger, and international dangers. Remember with your grace our gallant and brave warriors who protect America at home and abroad through their service in the armed forces, the diplomatic corps, the emergency first responders, and the United States Border Patrol. And lastly, Lord, we ask that Matt and his wonderful family and all of the American Conservative Union's leadership and CPAC's participants enjoy your blessings during this meeting and beyond. We humbly ask these things in your name and collectively say, Amen.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Excellent. Please be seated. This is terrific, and you guys did very well too. You know all the words. I'm just saying. Who's in the mood for baseball now? It's like the season's almost there, right? All right, so we have a few rules here while you gnaw on your leaves. First of all, you heard when I introduced Kimberly Bellissimo, we had a reaction here, right? Kimberly Bellissimo. Bellissimo. Now, here's what's going to happen. It's natural at a setting like this that there might be some lulls in the evening. There may be some moments when the MC delivers a joke that doesn't really land exactly how he expected it. It's not our fault. It happens. It's the setting. It's a room. It's big. You aren't listening. You're schmoozing. You're networking. You're trying to get a job. I get it. So when I deliver one of those jokes and I expected a better response, I'm going to give you a secret Italian code word, bellissimo. This works year after year. I don't know why, but it's going to. So Kimberly, thank you again for using your name as a great code word there. Kimberly Bellissimo. There she is. Thank you, Kimberly. Now, speaking of jokes, when I found out that our keynote speaker was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, I had a whole list of jokes. I mean, the guy is hilarious. And please, he's huge, he's giant, right? He's from Kansas. That opens up all of the Wizard of Oz canon of jokes. He works at Foggy Bottom. I mean, the jokes write themselves, right? So then Matt says, oh, Larry, Secretary of State has some business. He's going to give his speech during the day. Instead, we've got the National Security Advisor. I think, great, Bolton, this is great. I mean, I got a lot of jokes about Bolton, right? And we got please, 20 minutes on the mustache, right? I mean, I even had some jokes translated to Ukrainian. It was going to be phenomenal. Bellissimo. Help me out on that one. But then I realized, oh gosh, wait a minute, no, it's not Bolton anymore. Oh, crap. It's Robert O'Brien. He's actually really awesome. Oh my God, he's smart and really incredible, and he's like serious, and he's like no nonsense, and he just like does this really incredible, important job. There's nothing funny about that. Yeah, I got nothing. I mean, on a serious note, I am interested how much his parents had to bribe UCLA to get him in. Well, that's how they do it now, right? I mean, 60, 70 grand, yeah, UC, no problem. 150, USC. Actually, my kid goes to UCLA. I don't know why I'm making that joke. But that's not really a joke about Robert O'Brien. And that's where the jokes end. We are very excited that you're here. I'm going to let you eat your salad. Then we're going to have the full-on dinner. And then we're going to have an incredible presentation. The fact that I can't even see the end of the tables tonight is such an astounding testament to what an incredible organization ACU is and what a phenomenal event CPAC is and will be into the future. Thank you so much for having me be part of this, and we will see you after dinner.
Protesters in Hong Kong are begging the United States and specifically President Trump to help them in their fight for democracy. Tonight, some prominent American conservatives are meeting them in the semi-autonomous territory.
This Hong Kong movement for democracy is something every American needs to pray for, needs to try to support, because the Chinese regime in Beijing is probably more vulnerable than we realize.
You're looking at a face-off on one of the main roads in Hong Kong this Sunday afternoon. At one end, protesters with umbrellas ready because of the tear gas which will be shot by police.
With the suppression that we're seeing from the Chinese communists towards these peaceful protesters, there was a genuine concern that Matt, Dan, and several other of the ACU staff would end up in jail.
We would hear people say, "I will die for freedom," and they meant it.
We're here to support you. I know.
This morning, anti-government protests in Hong Kong reaching a new level of violence.
Tens of thousands marched to the U.S. consulate pleading with President Trump to liberate Hong Kong. The American flag held high as the crowd sang America's national anthem.
Strong leadership coming from President Trump has put some of these regimes on the precipice, and I'm hoping that they fall the right way, which is freedom for their people.
Shannon, I've just never seen anything like it. What you have is literally thousands of mostly what I would call students or kids, teenagers. Some as young as 12 years old have been arrested.
Something I hear all over the globe when I travel. People in MAGA hats. People saying, please tell your president that for the first time we have an American leader who's got our back, who's on our side.
They're willing to give their lives for this struggle. It's a very emotional thing to see young people committed to democracy.
It's completely the opposite of what they hear when they turn on CNN International in their country about how much the globe is so embarrassed of Donald Trump.
The movement is now receiving support from members of the Conservative Political Action Conference here in the U.S. The conservative group joined student protesters, some as young as 12.
I had a young man come up to me. I looked very American clearly on the streets of Hong Kong, and he said, "Are you with CPAC?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm with CPAC." He goes, "Thank you for being here with me." It makes you almost want to tear up. These are really important times.
Our last night in Hong Kong, this great patriot who stands for freedom, Jimmy Lai, invited us to his house.
And when we showed up at Jimmy's house, there were members of the media who were essentially communist spies from media outlets owned by the communist regime in Beijing. They were there to harass us, to make us feel unsafe.
Filming us as we were walking in, videotaping us, recording who we are, why we were there.
We had this conversation around the table. What's at stake? What are the chances that this comes out well for the people of Hong Kong? What are the chances that a Tiananmen Square type episode occurs? Will there be this violent, bloody crackdown? And as we said our goodbyes, we headed back to our hotel. We all went to sleep, and not many hours later, we were woken up to the news.
The home of Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai was attacked early Thursday morning by a firebombing.
Two masked men lit glass bottles on fire in front of Lai's residence and lobbed them at the gate. The firebombs were seen as an act of intimidation against the pro-democracy tycoon.
They were sending us a very clear message. Don't meet with Jimmy. They were sending Jimmy a very clear message. Don't meet with the CPAC guys. And I think they were also sending us a message that it was time for us to leave. Of course, the greatest thing about going to Brazil is just the spirit of the people. I mean, they want to sing, dance, chant, hug. Our biggest message from America is the following. Number one, what you're doing in Brazil, you're giving us hope. Hopefully what we're doing in America is giving you hope. Number two, President Trump stood up in front of the UN and at the Congress, and in every speech he says, America will never embrace socialism.
is a very nice opportunity. Maybe it's the first time that the Brazilians have the opportunity to have an event like this. It's important to know how to debate with the socialists or with the leftists about abortion and gun control and all the other issues that are very precious for us.
I'm a conservative because I believe in good morals and values.
I think they're so enthusiastic because the yoke of socialism has been lifted. They've experienced it. They've lived through it. They're survivors. They love what they hear coming out of America.
I want to see if you do recognize that too, huh? Like this?
You would hear them talk Portuguese, and then they would say, fake news. And people would just start screaming. They totally understood this concept of fake news, which we think only happens here in America. Well, it happens there in Brazil as well.
They're trying to seize control of media and seize control of population. So the conscience is awakening. People are awakening conscience, becoming aware of this and trying to keep their rights, civil rights.
So we had about 20 to 30 years of socialism in Brazil. Obviously, it was a disaster, not only economically, but morally.
But for us, as a family, this fight against communism is very personal, because for Mercy, who's Cuban-American, her father was in Cuba when the communists came to power in the name of Fidel Castro. Mercy's father decided to fight communism, and for that, he was put in prison. He escaped barely with his life into America. As a man in his 80s, he looks at America and he's worried that the communism he fled in Cuba is starting to infiltrate the country now that he calls his own, America.
Yeah, very important event here in Brazil. We have been under socialist government for 16 years or even more. And there's a uprising of conservative ideas here. It's a very important moment to be here.
As CPAC goes around the world, we learn about the individual issues in different parts of the world. Some of them are very different, but there is very much a common ground. It makes us allies in a sense that we're all fighting the same thing.
It's fantastic. And that's what I call a literacy program right there. CPAC going to Brazil. That is terrific. Good dinner, everyone. Good dinner. Excellent. I want to, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Hang on. You know, so much of our news cycle is driven by tweets from a certain someone, and whenever I get those tweets, I always want to take a look. Hang on. What do we got here? Mediocre talent Larry O'Connor should skip the stupid jokes and stick with talk radio. Less Larry, more Mercedes. Sad exclamation point. You know, Mercedes, you could just text me. You didn't have to tweet that. That was a little out of line there. Really fast, they're clearing plates, and I want you to hear the next panel. So really quickly, one thing I neglected to do and I want to do, could we quickly see everybody here who is a retired member of the United States military? I would really love for you to stand up and be acknowledged, or active duty member of the United States military. Thank you so much. This is a very sleazy way for me to point out and brag that my second oldest daughter is a plebe at the Naval Academy. And I promised I'd wear the tie today. And again, so sorry that the Secretary of State's not here so I could point out how badly his West Point team lost in the football game this year. It was ugly. Although UCLA's football team was even worse. Oh, all right, I'll move on. Please join me in welcoming the aforementioned Mercedes Schlapp, Edward Bolsonaro, and Daniel DiMartino. is when we dance.
Oh, there they are.
This is
Glam, people, glam.
Mercedes should do Dancing with the Stars.
Yes, you're
That's
right.
what we need.
I could salsa dance, although my sister-in-law is much better at the salsa dancing than I am. Hi, everyone. Okay, so has it just been the 2 most remarkable days ever? I mean, you know, but what's been so amazing is that there's just this incredible energy in the room. And, you know, I always first have to start with, like, the really adorable silver-haired husband of mine, Matt Schlapp. Not you, Robert O'Brien, Matt Schlapp, which he's such a gem. We've been married for 18 years. We've 5 kids, 2 dogs, and it's such a blessing that you are in my life. And you have to remember that's when CPAC years ago was really kind of different and smaller. And it's the way it's been pointed out to me. It's America. It's truly about America coming together. True patriots, people who love this nation, people who love freedom. And so I'm so proud of the work that my husband does, Dan Schneider, and the fabulous ACU CPAC team. They are family to us. And it's really an honor to work with all of you. So just want to say thank you. And Robert O'Brien, it's great to have you here with your lovely wife, Lo Marie, and joining us this evening. And I think one of the things that we have really enjoyed is talking about the policy, right? You know, we really have to learn the facts. And in these different panels of today, Dan Schneider led one panel on China, for example. We've had conversations about 5G. It's such a broad range of discussion. We've talked about the economy with Larry Kudlow and Ivanka Trump. And tonight, I have the great honor of having 2 very distinguished guests. I got to spend a lot of time with one of the guests in CPAC Brazil, which was absolutely fabulous. And we're going to talk about people who have been impacted by socialism. You know, obviously our theme is America versus socialism, and these 2 individuals have lived through it. And so I want them to share with us their stories. First, I have Daniel Di Martino. He's a Venezuelan freedom activist and an economist who's joining us. You've seen him on Fox News, and is a really inspiration to our youth and a great messenger and voice on this topic. And Eduardo Bolsonaro, I had the great honor of meeting him and his beautiful wife, Heloisa. Is she here?
She is there.
Where is she?
Please clap. She's wonderful.
I really don't know how she puts up with him, but she does. No, we love you, we love you. And Eduardo really just opened his heart and he brought us over to CPAC and to Brazil. And I have to tell you, I've met a lot of talented politicians in my lifetime. President Donald Trump, who's my favorite. But Eduardo is incredibly charismatic, and people love him. The Brazilian people love him. We would be stopped every 2 seconds. And you were so engaging with all those people and all the Brazilians. And it was just wonderful to be part of that experience with you. And what I loved was learning your story and your fight for freedom in taking down Lula's socialism and rebuilding the country. So I'm going to start with you, Eduardo. Tell us, you lived through it under Lula's regime, the socialist regime. How was it?
Well, it was terrible. In the end of the regime after Lula, we had Dilma Rousseff. And in Brazil, we faced the biggest protest ever in the history of Brazil. We are talking about 4 million people on the streets all around asking for the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff. Because we are not only talking about a corruption system that steals like millions of dollars. We are talking about billions, maybe trillions of dollars. As you know, Cuba regime is kind of a cancer that we have in our region. And time after time, they need other countries because they live as parasites. So it was our turn to host this parasite called Cuban regime. So what they made, they stole billions and billions of dollars, especially from a public bank called BNDES. So we built, with the money of the Brazilians, we built a port in Cuba, subway in Caracas in Venezuela, another stuff in Nicaragua, everywhere around. Shame on us that we were financing this kind of other dictatorship regimes. So in the end of the day, people was fed up of so much socialism, and they were asking for something different. Everybody were looking for that, and no one was going to the jail. So Jair Bolsonaro became an option during the election of 2018. And if you let me, Mercedes, I have to remark something. They tell that we are racist, xenophobic, homophobic, we don't like women, we don't like, I don't know.
Sounds familiar,
everybody.
people.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
But during the campaign of 2018, my father got stabbed. And almost never you see the press telling you that who stabbed my father, it was a former member from the Socialist Liberty Party that we have in Brazil, extreme left. So who are the intolerant? You know, in the end of the day, like people was realizing that. So, you know, we faced it for the first time something called silent vote. I don't know if you had it here.
Yes, the silent Trump whisperer. The silent vote, I think we know.
So this is pretty much how Jair Bolsonaro got elected, also because he was the only one talking against gun control. And in the first year that Jair Bolsonaro is in the office, it's easier nowadays for the Brazilians to buy a gun. And we face it, the number of the murders going down 20%. So it proves what we talk here. It proves what we talk here. And poor people from Venezuela, sorry, DiMartino, but you have a strong gun control there since, I guess, 2012. And who have guns in Venezuela? Right. Only the collectives and other terrorist groups that we know that are there in Venezuela.
Daniel, you were born in Venezuela. You fled Venezuela, came to the United States. Tell us your story.
Yeah, well, I came to the United States in mid-2016 when things were already pretty tough in Venezuela like they are today. I've had to make lines for hours to buy things like toilet paper in the supermarket, toothpaste. I've been denied to buy what I wanted. I haven't found what I wanted in the supermarket. And I've had to fill my pockets with cash because it's not enough to pay for the ever-increasing prices. And the blame is so clear, and the Venezuelan people know it. The Venezuelan people know that the government spending on welfare programs paid for by printing money because they couldn't tax us anymore. What caused our crisis? It was the socialist policies of Chavez and Maduro. The problem was that the Venezuelan people learned this too late, right? Chavez got into power in 1998. Actually, in December, he was elected in 1998. That's a month before I was born. So I never lived under a different government. And so many Venezuelans have never lived under a different government. And now Venezuelans who, in the late 90s, we were one of the richest nations in the continent. And in the 50s, we were actually the fourth richest country in the world. Now we're one of the poorest countries in the world. You know, Venezuelans now have a saying, which is that we were rich, but we didn't know it. And I feel like that is a huge teaching for America, because we are rich, but millennials don't know it.
That is a great line. Eduardo, walk me through, obviously, the socialists did a lot of damage to Brazil, especially in the school system, right? How they rewrote textbooks. What changes have you and your father worked on to change the course of how we're teaching our young people in Brazil?
First, we have to keep the internet free. My father, he went to the second round with his oppositor. It was Fernando Haddad, a member of the Workers' Party. And he was publicly talking about control the internet, control the media. But they always use smart words. They say, we have to democratize the media, democratize the internet. But what is that? Like, in the end of the day, it's put someone to control if, oh, you can tell this, no, you can't post that, you have to block it. We all know what is going on. Even without this kind of policy, we see what Twitter is doing. I was just here looking Donald Trump Jr. earlier today, talking about it, and we have the same problems in Brazil. And why we need to keep internet free? Because this is sometimes is the only way that our students have to show to people that what is going on in the secrets of the classrooms. And don't come tell me that, oh, this is something that you are stimulating, like people do videos with the teacher talking. No. It's the right of the students to receive a nice education. There is no parents that let their children in the school to the children learn about sex or drugs. Am I wrong? Is it something like out of the world? For sure not. This is the normal thing. So we have to do the normal thing. And I have to add that in Brazil, you have some schools that the situation was so bad that it's necessary a new program that in Brazil we call the civil military schools. By this program, we are getting film schools where we are having militaries working on the coordination of the schools. So the teachers are regular teachers, but on the coordination have the militaries. Why? Because they bring discipline. Where they are, you don't have drug dealers together with the militaries in Brazil. So we are trying to make something effective to Brazil go up international rankings as the PISA exam organized by the OECD. And Brazil usually is on the last position. So we are trying to get a better education, not talking about gender ideology. This is not the problem of the Brazilians. The problem of the Brazilians is because the teachers are afraid to get punched during a class or sometimes even killed by students. So this is the real problem that we have, and this is what we are working. Bringing freedom. We have to make a comfortable atmosphere to the students learn better.
Absolutely, yeah. Daniel, I mean, your experience, obviously, in living under the regimes, basically, with Chavez and then Maduro, how was it going to school? Like, what was the indoctrination process for you?
Well, and the indoctrination process was very mild. Mild in the sense that, I shouldn't use that word, it's subtle, what it was. For example, it was assumed that the government should own the oil industry. That is like unquestionable. If you go to school, why, is there any other country in the world that the government doesn't own the oil industry? Like the United States, where it works. And things like that, like the government should provide healthcare or housing, it was just not even questioned. I never even questioned it until I started reading economists from America, like Milton Friedman, or when I started listening to YouTube videos of Ronald Reagan. Yeah. And that's what inspired me to believe in freedom. Yeah.
Eduardo, one of the things you talk about, and we had a lot of this discussion back when we were in Brazil, was free markets. You're about the trading with the United States. How do we open up more markets? You and your father are very focused on how we can create economic opportunities for Brazilians. Talk us through how that transition has had to happen from a socialist, more central planning type of government to now allowing for this economic growth.
Yeah, first of all, we are, for the first year, after so many years, that we finished 2019 with no corruption scandal in Brazil. So if you are going to travel abroad, if you are going to travel abroad asking for investments, no one is going to lend your money for a place where even the president is in the jail because of corruption. So this is the first step. Yes, and sometimes they went outside of Brazil and lied for you, talking that Mr. Lula da Silva was like a kind of a political prisoner. Don't believe in that, please. This is the biggest criminal that we have in Brazil. But okay, back into the free market. Now, as Jair Bolsonaro got elected, not spending even $1 million during the whole campaign, he had independence enough to name whatever he wants to be the minister. So, in this scenario, he named Mr. Paulo Guedes as the economy minister of Brazil. So after over, I don't know, 30 years, now we have someone liberal in economy talking about free trades, free markets in Brazil. Before that, it was only socialism and, you know, a lot of regulations, a lot of interference. And at the end of the day, our companies was going out even to Paraguay. All respect to Paraguay, but Brazil is a big country, 200 million consumers, a lot of resources. Why we have companies like running away to Paraguay? So after that, after we have Paulo Guedes in the head of the economy ministry, we signed a free trade agreement with European Union. That is something that was stopped for 20 years. And we made, in my opinion, what was the main reform that was necessary for Brazil. It was the pension reform. So very sensitive. People was not believing that Jair Bolsonaro could do that because he was stopping with the pork in barrels. But we made it, and Brazil, thanks God, last year we generated around 1 million new jobs, and we grew up a little bit more than 1%. And this year, we're going to double size it.
Excellent. And, you know, Mercedes, I view Brazil as an example of what Venezuela could do in the future. It's very hard to transition from socialism to free markets. It's very easy to go from free markets to socialism.
That's true.
Which is why we need to keep it that way. But in Brazil, they're managing to do this right. In Argentina, on the other hand, because they did not do reforms fast enough, we saw what happened with Macri, right? He lost his election. He was not popular. Inflation kept going up. In Brazil, the economic indicators are working because they're implementing reforms boldly, and that's what we need to do in Venezuela. Privatization, free trade, lower taxes, less regulation.
And I absolutely, and it's a formula that works. It works in the United States, and it's something that would apply in all these countries, including Brazil. One of the things I'm interested in hearing your opinion about is, you know, I met Guaido's wife in the Oval Office with President Trump, and it was really a moving moment. It was very emotional because they're so brave. I mean, they're literally going into back to Venezuela, knowing that their lives could be endangered. They're trying to make this change, but it kind of is a stop and go. You know, it's like you feel like we can get there, but then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. What is your prediction? Where do you think this all ends with Venezuela?
Look, I think that what has been clear over the last 21 years of my life is that negotiation is never going to work with a terrorist socialist regime like Maduro's. You don't negotiate with terrorists. And we need to make sure that the international community knows this. The international community and the same opposition in Venezuela needs to know this. Because we have tried this so many times. Now Maduro is going to try to make fake elections by the end of this year for the National Assembly. This is something that's going to happen. And you know, Guaido and the opposition parties are going to have to decide whether to participate. We should not participate in a fake election. We should not legitimize the regime. And I'm hopeful that that won't happen, but it's going to be tough without somebody who's committed to applying solutions that are not negotiation. We need to make sure that the Venezuelan people keep protesting, and that's hard because
they get tired.
They get
hard.
tired.
They're trying to feed their families.
You know, they're threatened by people with guns, and we're unarmed, which is why the Second Amendment is so important in the United States.
Amen.
So, long term, nothing lasts forever, and I'm hopeful that that will end at some point. But I don't think that yet the Venezuelan opposition and even the international community understands that negotiation is not the path forward because it hasn't worked in the past.
No, that's excellent. Eduardo, I said it briefly in the video, but it really was a moment when we were in CPAC Brazil. And I'll tell you, like, it's rowdy and fun here, but in Brazil, it's like a party. It's like Rio.
It's like Maracanã Stadium.
Totally. They are dancing, they are singing. Like, we need to get some, like, songs going with our CPAC. So it was really just an amazing experience. But what we found in common, there was so much that we found in common. And one of the issues that kept popping up was the fake news.
Yes.
I thought that was fascinating. Literally, it would be, they would speak in Portuguese and they'd go, da-da-da-da-da-da, and then it would be like, fake news, and then everyone would just jump up. And you're going, wait a second, it happens here in Brazil too? And so I had right? And
Yeah.
so we had the opportunity to meet certain journalists who are trying to break the trend too in Brazil. Can you tell us, I think it would be great to tell us the story of, when your father got elected, which was a shocker, right? Everyone thought, how did he could possibly do it? But there really was this effort to stop him from the news, from the media.
Yeah, the mainstream media in Brazil, biggest part of them, they were very used with government's money, which in the end of the day is people's money. So in Brazil, we had support from really few small YouTuber, like not big channels. We have here, for example, Alan dos Santos from Terça Livre. Is a channel in Brazil that is fighting back against all of that. And yes, but the mainstream media was fake news everywhere. You have even a very famous video of Jair Bolsonaro talking to the Globo, which is the biggest group when you talk about the press in Brazil. He's in the video saying, work hard, because if I take the office, I will end with the money for you, because we have other priorities, security, education, and all of that. So this is one more thing that he's accomplishing. Like people in Brazil, sometimes they're not used with the politicians that during the elections time say something and then they change their mind. But Jair Bolsonaro is keeping his promises. And if you think you have a better situation here, imagine in Brazil where we never had a CPAC, we don't have even a Fox News, we don't have almost nothing. Like things are changing step by step, but it's still we are still living in a hard scenario. And that's why it's so important we keep the internet on. And I don't think that without internet, Jair Bolsonaro would get elected. So this is how we live there and how we fight back, exposing them, because they are so ridiculous when you talk, especially when you are nazist, fascist, and all of those things that for sure we are not. And for sure, 57 million people that voted in Jair Bolsonaro are not.
Yes, and so that's why social media plays such a critical role. I mean, when we were in Brazil, the only channel that, well, we didn't understand Portuguese, but as much as I speak Spanish, it's really not the same thing. But it would be CNN International. That's all. And then all of a sudden, Jake Tapper would show up on the screen, and you're like, oh boy. So do you imagine the perception that the international community has of our president because they're watching CNN International? It just is so sad to me. I'm like, they don't get to see the full story of all the great accomplishments that the president has had so far. One of the things, Daniel, that I want, if you were to be talking to a group of just, the millennials, the group of people that are fighting hard for their socialist cause, what would be the message you would send to them?
I always give the same message because I actually go through college campuses and talk about this. I want quality healthcare. I want cheaper college, of course. And I also want cheaper housing. And I also want better quality of life for everybody. The question is how to get there.
Yes.
And yes, that's right. So I think that we as conservatives have failed, especially politicians, not necessarily us, the people as conservatives, in giving a free market alternative to socialism. We can't just defend the status quo, because when I go around college campuses and speak, I just don't tell them, we should just stay like we are. No, I tell them we actually need to roll back on zoning so the housing is cheaper. We actually need to end regulations that make college more expensive. We need to end the student aid bubble that the government fuels. We need to end government regulation of healthcare that makes health insurance more expensive. So we need to come together as conservatives with these solutions so that the alternative is not socialism versus status quo, but free markets versus status quo.
Right. And that's a great point. And I always say, they talk about free college and free healthcare and free everything, but it's not freedom. It's not freedom. Like when you're talking about freedom that comes with our God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which comes with hard work, which comes with grit, which comes with how we are able to live our American dream for all Americans. I think that's, the goal that we strive for.
We need to teach them to be grateful.
Yes.
Gratefulness is the best antidote to socialism, because socialism comes out of envy, right? I want what he has because he's rich and I'm not, right? But if we teach our children that, we need to be grateful because people like me in Venezuela, we couldn't even find what we wanted in the supermarket.
Yes.
Those stories are powerful.
Yes.
Having to make lines for food. It's not a joke. These things are happening today in Venezuela, are happening today in Cuba, are happening in Nicaragua, in many places. So we need to teach that we are fortunate and that we need to be grateful to live in the best country in the world.
I love it. I love it. Slap, I'm adopting Danielle. You don't know that, but we're adopting him. Eduardo, any last words? What message do you want to leave with our friends here at CPAC?
If you go back during the 90s and ask for a Venezuela, that Venezuela would face in 2020 a dictatorship, a narco-dictatorship, as they are living now, they would say that you are crazy. So what you have to do, pay attention, because freedom is a daily fight, and socialism is there. They are always trying to make up, trying to change some details, but in the end of the day, what they bring is death, starvation, and all of that we are looking in Venezuela. So keep your country free. Do not vote in Bernie Sanders, and please re-elect Donald Trump.
Thank you, Eduardo, Danielle. Thank you, CPAC.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was espectacular. Really, you guys are wonderful.
Yeah. Wow. That's a tough act to follow. Thank you, Mercedes Schlapp. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Danielle. Danielle, as my wife would say. All right, so we have we are quite honored to have a keynote speaker tonight who is special in many ways. And I think we all know, after watching the last 3.5 years, and after being here the last 3.5 days, that for many of us, the revelations about how President Trump had been maligned by various government agencies that are charged with protecting our national security has shaken our confidence. Today, we all heard from our extremely confident Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Yesterday, we heard from a courageous counselor and congressman, John Ratcliffe, who, if you're checking your social media feeds, literally moments ago has been nominated to be the next Director of National Intelligence. And tonight, we complete a sort of trifecta as we welcome Ambassador Robert C. O'Brien to give the keynote address
at our annual Ronald Reagan dinner. You all know that Ambassador O'Brien is serving as the President's National Security Advisor, and during the course of CPAC, we have been reliving the horrors of a coup that was attempted and perpetrated by government officials who believe that we are deplorable. It is refreshing to know that good men like Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Congressman John Ratcliffe, and our guests tonight, they're going to do something that is so refreshing. They're going to put our national security first. They're going to put their personal political agendas off to the side, and they're going to focus every moment of every day on implementing the President's national security agenda and simply keeping us all safe. It's a great honor to welcome Ambassador O'Brien to CPAC. Thank you so much, sir. Please give him a warm welcome.
Matt, thank you for that kind introduction. Matt and Mercedes are great Americans, and it's great to spend the evening with them. So I'll tell you that I think we saw a couple of future presidents just a moment ago. I don't know if it's future presidents of Brazil, Venezuela, or the United States, but any of those countries would be fortunate to have Eduardo or Daniel represent them. But what a how great was that? It's wonderful to be here tonight with so many like-minded conservatives, so many good friends, old friends, new friends. And what an honor to speak at a dinner named in Ronald Reagan's honor. I took my first trip to Washington from California back in 1982 and was fortunate to meet President Reagan in the Rose Garden. And now I think of that day often as I walk past the Rose Garden daily. And so to speak at a dinner in his honor, that's named for President Reagan, is a huge honor for me. So I'm joined tonight by my wife, Lo Marie. Several years ago, when I was asked to serve as the President's hostage envoy, I promised her, I said, listen, I'll go get everyone home. It'll be a year. I'll be back in California. That was a couple of years ago. Fortunately for me, she's a great partner and a patriot, and so she gave up the sunny climes of Pasadena and moved to Washington, and we have a little bit of a longer path of service than we'd expected, but I'm grateful to her tonight for being here, so thanks, Lo Marie. Now, I'm keenly aware that you brought tickets tonight expecting to hear from my good friend, our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. I'm sorry. To paraphrase the Gipper, it's like movie fans who thought they were going to an Errol Flynn movie and instead they got Ronald Reagan. And but what Mike and I both have in common is that we work for the great 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. I bring you his greetings. I know you're going to see him here tomorrow. Tonight he's off in South Carolina. The only thing I know is I don't know how many people will be in the stadium, but I'm sure there'll be more people outside the stadium watching on jumbotrons than are actually in the stadium for his rally. But you've got something to really look forward to tomorrow. Several years ago, in the prior administration, I wrote that the country and the world are paying a heavy price for President Obama's self-described lead-from-behind foreign policy. I went on to note, though, that I remained optimistic about our future. I grew up in small-town America, in California, back in the days when we still elected terrific GOP governors like Ronald Reagan, George Deukmejian, and Pete Wilson. We celebrated the 4th of July with the same enthusiasm that we enjoyed Christmas. It was marked by block parties and bottle rockets and parades. My friends and I had fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers who wore the uniforms of our armed forces. A number of us followed in their footsteps, and now, like Larry O'Connor, whose daughter's at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, we have sons and daughters who will defend our freedom. Lomer and I are blessed to have two daughters. One's an Air Force ROTC cadet out in Utah, and another is a future Army JAG officer down in Georgia. So my friends and I knew as kids that America was a winning nation. And we also knew that when America won, free people around the world also won. And although we grew up in the shadows of Vietnam, Watergate, and the Carter years, including the humiliation of the hostage crisis, we never doubted that America would make a comeback. And in 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected president, and our country and the world witnessed a rebirth of freedom that many people believed would never occur. In 2015, before the president and our beautiful First Lady took that famous ride down the elevator in Trump Tower, I said I was certain that the American people still believed in winning and that they still saw our land as a shining city on a hill. I was confident that the United States of America would make yet another comeback and that it would be soon. What I could not have known then, while I was practicing law in Los Angeles, is that 4 short years later, I would be serving as the National Security Advisor to a president who has truly made America great again. And I think it's safe to say that President Trump has done more for the security of our nation in 3 short years than any president during my lifetime. Back in March 2019, I was privileged to be in the Oval Office when President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence welcomed home an American citizen, Danny Birch. Danny had been held captive in Yemen by terrorists for 18 months. Quote, "We have a very big moment because we have Danny Birch back home where he should be," close quote, President Trump told reporters. Danny, welcome home. And I won't forget sitting on the couch in the Oval, Danny responded, "Gosh, it's great to be an American." And it was such a moving experience that even the jaded White House press pool clapped and applauded for Danny coming home. That was a wonderful day, and I was privileged to spend several others like it as President Trump welcomed home one hostage after another. The President's commitment to our fellow citizens wrongfully detained overseas is emblematic of his determination to put America first when it comes to our nation's foreign policy. I know there's been much discussion over the past several years about what exactly America first means. And I can tell you that after 2 years of working for President Trump as his national security advisor and as his hostage envoy, this is what it means. He evaluates every decision through the lens of whether, in the end, a proposed course of action is good for the United States. And that's the way it should be. I've had the solemn duty of joining President Trump when he visits Dover Air Force Base for the dignified transfer of our fallen heroes after they've made the ultimate sacrifice. And I can tell you there's nothing more difficult for this president or for any president than to make that trip to Dover to be with our fallen heroes' families. So when President Trump says America first, he does so with the understanding that it is our warriors who may be called upon to make the sacrifices necessary to secure our national interest. And I'm pleased to report that in the first 3 years in office, President Trump has indeed made our nation more secure. The President recently unveiled his vision for Middle East peace, which is the most serious, realistic, and detailed plan ever presented, one that could make the Israelis and Palestinians in the region safer and more prosperous. His plan is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring peace to the Holy Land. The vision for Middle East peace came after the President kept his promise to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That was a commitment that presidents of both parties have made, but then quietly discarded for over a generation. Instead of creating instability and violence, as the foreign policy establishment uniformly predicted, moving our embassy to Israel's eternal capital helped lay the foundation for President Trump's bold peace plan. Understanding that appeasement only invites further aggression, President Trump pulled us out of the disastrous JCPOA. He rallied a regional coalition to deter Iran's nuclear ambitions and support for global terrorism. The administration's maximum pressure sanctions campaign against Iran is starting to bear fruit, and we look forward to the day when Iran truly forgoes its nuclear and regional ambitions, eschews terrorism, and rejoins the community of civilized nations. The president took decisive action against the Iranian Quds Force and its leader. That exquisite mission stopped plans by Qasem Soleimani and his cohorts to kill and maim Americans in the region. Only days before the strike, our embassy in Baghdad had been attacked. Under President Trump's leadership, and with the assistance of a rifle company of U.S. Marines and an infantry platoon of Army soldiers who literally rushed to the scene, we made it clear that to our foes that their attack on our embassy in Baghdad would not result in a reprise of Benghazi or Tehran in 1979. America's military and our coalition partners destroyed the ISIS territorial caliphate. And the president ordered a bold Joint Force Special Operations mission to bring to justice the founder and the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. In a polarized time and in a divided city, at the State of the Union, the president introduced Carl and Marcia Mueller. And when Carl stood up, he held a picture of his beautiful daughter, Kayla, for the American people to see. Kayla had been abused and brutally murdered by al-Baghdadi. The president then announced that the Special Forces team that executed that raid with dash and boldness and audacity gave their task force the numerical version of Kayla's birthday, TF 8-14. Our soldiers had not forgotten Kayla, and there was a standing ovation from both sides of the aisle. It was a very special moment. Our team, under the president's leadership, successfully persuaded NATO allies to do what they had not done under every president since Jimmy Carter, and that is to increase defense spending substantially. Since President Trump took office, NATO allies have increased defense spending by over $120 billion. By 2024, that number will be $400 billion. Those are billions of dollars that the American taxpayers don't have to spend because our allies and their citizens are bearing their fair share. Increased defense expenditure by our NATO allies makes them safer, and it makes us safer. The U.S. withdrew from the ineffective INF Treaty, and combined with the president's new investments in the Defense Department and our tough approach on arms control, we may bring Russia and China to the negotiating table for serious discussions on verifiable arms reductions for the first time in a generation. President Trump ended defense sequestration and has begun the process of rebuilding the United States military. President Trump is moving forward with his commitment to a 355-ship Navy and a modern Air Force, Army, and Marine Corps equipped for today's challenges. Earlier this year, the president stood up the first new branch of the armed forces in 70 years, the Space Force. With the Space Force, the United States will be ready for the 21st century, and most importantly, will be able to deter great powers, Russia and China, in the new frontier. President Trump, with Vice President Pence at his side, are today directing the most robust interagency response of any country around the world to the threat of the coronavirus. We are protecting Americans through decisive actions, such as banning travel by non-citizens who have recently been to China and their entry into the United States. That was a courageous move. It was controversial at the time, but it bought America important time so that we could prepare for the virus. America was the first major country to impose such restrictions, and we've allocated billions of dollars to respond appropriately to the coronavirus challenge. Our ability to succeed in foreign affairs and national security is underpinned by the renewal of America's economic might under President Trump. The economy has grown at a record pace during President Trump's first 3 years, and the gains have been distributed across all demographic groups, including the lowest record unemployment for African Americans, the lowest record unemployment for Hispanic Americans, the lowest recorded unemployment for women in the workforce. The president has unleashed our energy potential, boosting economic growth while ending our dependence on foreign oil. And I can't tell you how much safer we are and how many options we have on the national security front because we're not forced to import our oil from the world's most dangerous regions. America's booming economy allows us to fund the rebuilding of our defenses. And it has also encouraged other nations, such as China, Mexico, Canada, and many others, to enter into fair trade deals that further bolster our economic well-being. At the NSC, we're undertaking historic reforms to effectively support the President's national security agenda. Under President Obama, the NSC staff ballooned to over 230 policy professionals. When I assumed office, that number still stood at 175. 6 months into my tenure, we've reduced the NSC policy staff to around 115 professionals. The same level it was when Condoleezza Rice held my office. And at the same time, we're running more principals and deputies committee meetings, which are the lifeblood of the national security process. No government agency performs well when it's bloated, and that includes national security agencies. President Trump is convinced, as you heard at the State of the Union, that America's best days remain ahead. He believes that we are on the cusp of a second American century. And under his leadership, I have absolutely no doubt that we are on track to leave our children and our grandchildren a stronger, more prosperous, and more secure America than the one we inherited. Like Ronald Reagan, who this dinner honors tonight, President Trump's belief in peace through strength and America first, making America great again, has successfully guided America through a difficult time and a very dangerous world. And I'm confident, though, that we have many more successes ahead of us as we strive to keep America safe. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you here tonight. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, fine, okay, fine. Now we know how he got into UCLA, fine.
Just make sure that you say desserts and Ian's band.
Yes.
Dancing, and then
I've done this for 4 years, and she's done, yes.
Everybody read their emails and notices for changes in the schedule.
All right. Millie has given me my marching orders. First of all, are you having a great time? Not great time. Are you having a bellissimo time, right? All right, so I ask if you're having a great time, not did you have a great time, because we are not done. This evening is just beginning. We've got desserts. we've got drinks, we've got dancing, we've got live music. Ian Walters and the Gremlins, or what are they calling themselves now? They have no name, but Ian Walters is going to serenade you all night. Here's the deal. We have a big day tomorrow. Apparently, the President of the United States is going to be here tomorrow. Wait, he's going to be right here, right? Like right here, like right. Oh my God. Dude. The guy who used to host Celebrity Apprentice is going to be right here. That is so cool. Oh, that was Millie's line. All right, so here's the important thing. Tomorrow is a big day here. President will be here. Mark Levin will be here. I mean, what that means is you guys have a little homework to do. Check your emails. You're going to have a lot of details and a lot of instructions and a lot of scheduling that you need to know about because you do not want to miss everything that happens on this stage tomorrow. Let me tell you something. This is the 4th year in a row where we will have the President of the United States, Donald Trump, addressing CPAC. Who has been here for the prior 3? Let me hear you. I mean, unforgettable. I have been to Trump speeches. I have been to Trump victory parties after he won the caucuses and primaries. I have been to rallies. I have been to every kind of Donald Trump presentation. Nothing compares to Donald Trump at CPAC. So, don't get left out. Don't miss out. Get your emails. Get all the information. It is now my humble responsibility and great pleasure to thank you for being such a great audience at tonight's Reagan dinner and to beg you to enjoy your dessert, enjoy lots of drinks, and all the dancing tonight. Have a great evening. God bless America. Great job, everybody.